As you guys probably know by now, the January 2020 ban list did quite a number on a bunch of decks. Not only did they go after Orcus, Sky Strikers, and Thunder Dragons, but they also went after the decks that were pretty much next in line. They went after Pendulums, Solomon Great, as well as True Draco, which is what I'm going to profile in this video right now. I wouldn't count True Draco out just yet because it still has one diagram and has pretty much all the cards that it needs in order to interact with your opponent's board. And there are a few ways that you can play this deck. This variant that I'm going to show you guys today, this build was meant to prevent your opponent from making that huge board, especially since we are now in a meta that is defined by Spirals, Lunalights, and most recently Shaddoll Invoked. So if you guys enjoy deck profiles just like this, then be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you stay updated on my latest videos. So with that being said, let's get started with this True Draco deck profile. Now, before I get started with the monsters, you guys will have to excuse me for sounding a bit low or raspy in this video. I was losing my voice a few days ago, and I'm still trying to recover from that. So, with that being said, to start with the monsters, I'm running 3 copies of Majesty Maiden. This is your standard True Draco lineup. 3 Majesty Maiden, 3 Ignis Heat, and 1 Dynamite Knight. Now, each of these monsters actually have effects that you can activate when your opponent activates a card or effect. So you can chain the effect of either Majesty Maiden, Ignis Heat, or Dynamite Knight. Maiden lets you search your deck for a True Draco or a True King monster. Ignis Heat lets you take a True Draco or True King continuous spell from your deck and either activate it right away or add it to your hand. Dynamite Knight, it's the same thing as Ignis Heat, but with True Draco and True King continuous traps. And what's also cool about these True Draco monsters is that not only can you tribute monsters that you control for tribute summons, but you can also tribute continuous spells or traps you control, regardless of whether they are face down or face up, which is pretty cool. And the last monster that I'm running in this main deck is Inspector Boarder. This basically says no to monster effects, but I'm going to let you guys take a look at what it says. It says, cannot be normal or special summoned if you control a monster, but I'm pretty sure you could still set. Neither player can activate monster effects unless the number of monster effects that players previously activated that turn is less than the number of monster card types currently on the field. That includes Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Link. If the effect's activation was negated, it still counts towards the total for that turn. Only count effects that were activated while this monster was face up on the field. So, I'm guessing that, let's say that your opponent has a Link monster and a Fusion monster. That could I think that means that that player can only activate one monster effect while this card is on the field. It's a pretty good stun card. Like I said, this variant is meant to prevent your opponent from amassing that huge board. So, Inspector Board is one of the cards that I'm including in order to prevent them from doing that. So that's it for my main deck monsters, 10 monsters to be exact. I was actually coming out with a True Draco Monarch build before this where I include Majesty's Fiend. And this card is pretty cool. It says monster effects cannot be activated. And this can be searched off of Return of the Monarchs. And it could also be used in order to search your deck for the Monarch's Erupt. If you guys want to see that True Draco Monarch build, then be sure to let me know down in the comments. But let's continue with this build. For the spells, I am running 3 copies of the True Draco Heritage, and also 3 copies of Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix. They have effects that when they're sent from the field to the graveyard, you can basically pop your opponent's cards. In this case, the True Draco spells let you pop your opponent's spells and traps. What's also cool about these True Draco and True King continuous spells and traps, which you're about to see, is that each of these spells and traps let you gain additional normal summons without taking up your regular normal summon for the turn. And let's not forget the additional effects of each of these spells and traps. True Draco Heritage lets you draw cards equal to the number of True Draco and True King True Draco and True King cards that were sent from the field to the graveyard. So let's say that you sent a monster and a spell from your field to the graveyard this turn. Then you could draw 2 cards. Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix is basically your pot of avarice of the deck. You can target 3 True Draco and True King cards in your graveyard, then shuffle them back, and then draw 1 card. And I am running a bunch of spells because I want to be able to see my more important cards as possible. So I'm running 3 copies of Pot of Duality. You don't special summon with this deck as much, so that's why I decided to max out on this card. Then afterwards, 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Like I said, more consistency with the deck. Sorry, the blue glare is on the card sleeve. Anyway, I am running these 1-ofs. 1 Dragonic Diagram, of course. 1 Domain to lock out your opponent for the extra deck. 1 Terraforming. 1 card of Demise. Upstart Goblin. And finally, 1 Day of Peace. Dragonic Diagram is basically the card that ties this whole deck together. You can destroy 1 card in your hand or on your field, and you can add a True Draco or True King card from your deck to your hand. Like I said, Domain of the True Monarchs basically locks your opponent out from special summoning from the extra deck. Terraforming, of course, searches these out. Card of Demise lets you draw more cards as long as you have as long as you draw up to 3 cards in your hand. And like with Pot of Duality, you cannot special summon in the same turn. Upstart Goblin and 1 Day of Peace are also additional spells that you can draw off of. And last but not least, here are the traps. I am running 3 copies of True Draco Apocalypse, and of course your 1 copy of True King's Return. So just like the True Draco continuous spells that I showed you earlier, these True Draco and True King continuous traps let you pop monsters on the field. So I'm going to go into more in depth in the True King's Return because, yeah, these True Draco and True King traps they have like multiple effects on the same card. Anyway, so you can target 1 True Draco or True King monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn. And just like the True Draco spells let you tribute summon during your own turn, these True Draco and True King continuous traps let you tribute summon during your opponent's turn. Well, actually, you can only tribute summon during your opponent's turn with these cards. It says, during your opponent's main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves, tribute summon 1 True Draco or True King monster face up. And True Draco Apocalypse lets you pop 1 other True Draco or True King monster, True King card you control, actually. Destroy it. And if you do, the attack and defense of all face-up monsters your opponent controls become half their current attack and defense, even if it leaves the field. And there you go. That's the other effect. Just like with True King's Return, you could tribute summon during your opponent's turn. And for the floodgates that I'm running 3 copies of Summon Limit. So basically, neither player can summon more than twice per turn. You don't tribute summon your monsters as often in that turn anyway. So that's why I decided to include it here. Then 3 copies of Crackdown. This basically steals your opponent's monsters and negates its effects. And last but not least, this is a new floodgate that I'm trying out for this build. Lose 1 turn. So it says here, activate this card only if you currently control no special summon monsters. While the monster is face up on the field, negate its effects during the turn that the monster was special summoned. If the effect monster is special summoned in attack position, change it to defense position. So this is basically the Monarch's Erupt for this build. Like I said, I want to bring you guys a variant where I incorporate Monarch's Erupt as well as Domain and all those other Monarch spells and traps that you can incorporate with this build. Like I said, let me know down in the comments if you guys want to see that. And last but not least, here's my side deck. Of course, you guys can incorporate whatever cards that you like. I might change this side deck the further we are into the meta. So I'm running 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. No Ash Blossom in this build because I figured that since I only negate 1 special summon for the deck or 1 sending for the deck, my opponent will still be able to go off with their combos. I even tried ashing one of my opponent's Lunalight combos one time and it didn't work. So I decided just to include Droll and Lockbird in this build. And afterwards, for the back row decks, I'm running 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Of course, you can banish cards instead of popping them and simply destroying them and send them to the graveyard. And then finally, for the going second cards, I'm running 3 copies of Evenly Matched. What's really cool about Evenly Matched is that if your opponent happens to have Appaloosa on the field, they can't negate it because Appaloosa only negates monster effects. But they might have a Trigate though. So what you want to do is that you want to try and find a way to bait out your opponent's Trigate before you can activate Evenly Matched. Also, if you're going against the Invoke, then you might want to find a way to bait out your opponent's Macabre before you can activate this as well. And speaking of Shaddoll Invoked, these cards were picked specifically to go against Shaddoll Invoked. Anti-Spell Fragrance basically says you have to set all spell cards and you cannot activate them until your next turn. And then finally, 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. Basically shut down your opponent from special summoning or activating the effects of any fusion monsters, in the case of Shaddoll Invoked. But this also works with XCs, Synchro, and Pendulum and Ritual monsters. So that's it for this deck profile, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to help support the channel, then be sure to hit the like button. And if you haven't so already, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you stay updated on my latest Yu-Gi-Oh videos. And don't forget to use my TCG Player affiliate link in the description below so that you can support the channel as you buy the cards you want. This has been the Mage of Ancients. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you again.